Part 1. The Earth was no longer the vibrant blue-green jewel it had once been. Centuries of overuse, pollution, and unchecked population growth had drained its resources to the brink of collapse. The oceans were murky and lifeless in many places. Vast stretches of land had turned into barren deserts, and the air carried a faint metallic temps from factories that never stopped running. Humanity had survived by sheer determination, but survival alone wasn't enough. People needed space room to grow, breathe, and rebuild what they had lost. In response, the Global Alliance was formed. It was not born out of unity or goodwill, but out of desperation. Every nation on Earth pooled its resources, knowledge, and manpower into one collective effort, finding a way to ensure humanity's survival. For decades, scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, dreaming up solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable. Colonizing other planets became the ultimate goal, but there was a catch: those planets weren't empty. Alien civilizations already called them home, and while some were peaceful, others posed potential threats. That was when the idea for the Eclipse came into being. It wasn't just a ship. It was a weapon unlike anything the universe had ever seen, designed to be both a fortress and a harbinger of destruction. The Eclipse was equipped with a quantum annihilation beam capable of reducing entire planets to ash within seconds. Its construction took nearly 20 years and consumed more resources than anyone cared to admit. But when it finally launched, the world watched with bated breath. This was humanity's last hope, or so they were told. Commander William Carter stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, staring out at the endless expanse of stars through the massive viewport. He was a tall man with sharp features and piercing gray eyes that betrayed little emotion. At 45, he had spent most of his life serving in the military, climbing the ranks until he reached the position of commander. His reputation was built on discipline, strategy, and an unwavering sense of duty. To the public, he was a hero, the man entrusted with leading humanity's greatest achievement. To himself, he was simply a soldier doing his job. Beside him stood Rachel Monroe, the ship's chief engineer and his wife of 15 years. Unlike William, Rachel wore her emotions openly. Her dark hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and her hands were stained with grease from hours spent inspecting the Eclipse's intricate systems. She was brilliant, fiercely intelligent, and deeply passionate about her work. While William focused on tactics and leadership, Rachel understood the ship inside and out, knowing every wire, bolt, and circuit as if it were part of her own body. "You okay?" Rachel asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. William glanced at her briefly before returning his gaze to the stars. "I'm fine," he replied, his tone clipped. "Just thinking." "About what?" He hesitated, then sighed. "Everything. The mission. What happens next? Whether we're doing the right thing." Rachel frowned. "We don't have a choice. Will you know that? If we don't secure those planets, humanity doesn't stand a chance." "I know," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "But sometimes I wonder, is this really the only way? Destroying entire worlds, wiping out civilizations. Does that make us any better than the aliens we're afraid of?" Rachel didn't answer immediately. Instead, she crossed her arms and leaned against the railing, her eyes following the same starry horizon as William's. "It's not about being better or worse," she said finally. "It's about survival. We've pushed Earth to its limits, and now we need somewhere else to go. If these aliens won't share their planets peacefully, then we have to take them by force. It's harsh, but it's reality." William nodded slowly, though doubt still lingered in his mind. He trusted Rachel implicitly. She had always been his anchor, the person who grounded him when the weight of responsibility threatened to crush him. Yet even she couldn't fully ease his unease. Something about this mission felt wrong, like they were crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The rest of the crew bustled around them, preparing for the Eclipse's maiden voyage. There were hundreds of people aboard, each playing a vital role in the operation. Laura Bennett, a young communications officer with bright green eyes and a quick smile, sat at her station, monitoring incoming signals from Earth Command. Jason Cole, the navigator, pored over star charts and coordinates, plotting the ship's course. And then there were the soldiers, clad in sleek black uniforms, their weapons ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. As the eclipse drifted further away from Earth, the planet grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely from view. For the first time in history, humanity was leaving its cradle behind, venturing into the unknown with a weapon powerful enough to reshape the galaxy. The thought was exhilarating and terrifying. Hours passed, and the ship approached its first target, Zorathias 7. According to Earth Command, it was a lush, fertile planet inhabited by an advanced alien species. Intelligence reports claimed that the Zorathians were hostile and posed a significant threat to human expansion. But as the eclipse entered orbit, something felt off. The planet below was breathtakingly beautiful, its surface covered in sprawling forests, shimmering lakes, and towering mountains. Cities dotted the landscape, their architecture elegant and harmonious. There were no signs of fortifications, no visible weapons systems. Nothing to suggest hostility. "This doesn't look right," Rachel murmured, standing beside William as they studied the holographic display of the planet. "If there's such a threat, why aren't they preparing for battle? Why aren't there any defenses?" William rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. Maybe they're confident in their abilities. Or maybe they don't see us as a threat yet. Or maybe the reports are wrong, Rachel countered. "Have you considered that possibility? That Earth Command might have exaggerated the danger to justify using the eclipse?" William stiffened. "Don't start, Rachel. We have our orders. Questioning them won't change anything." She opened her mouth to argue but thought better of it. Arguing with William when he was in commander mode rarely ended well. Instead, she turned her attention back to the display, her jaw tightening in frustration. Meanwhile, Laura intercepted a transmission from the planet's surface. It was garbled and fragmented, but one phrase came through clearly: "We mean no harm." She replayed the message several times, trying to decipher more, but it was no use. Curious, she brought it to William's attention. "Sir, I think you should hear this," she said, holding out her tablet. William listened to the recording, his expression unreadable. When it finished, he handed the device back to Laura, without a word. "What do you think it means?" she asked cautiously. "It means nothing," he replied firmly. "We have our mission parameters. Prepare the quantum annihilation beam for deployment." Laura hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the order. "But sir, if they're trying to communicate, that's not our concern," William interrupted, his voice sharp. "Our job is to neutralize the threat. Now carry out your orders." "Yes, sir," Laura mumbled, retreating to her station as the countdown to activation began. Tension spread throughout the ship like wildfire. Some crew members went about their tasks mechanically, avoiding eye contact with one another. Others whispered nervously, questioning whether they were making the right decision. Even Jason, usually stoic and unflappable, looked uneasy as he adjusted the targeting coordinates. Rachel stayed silent, watching William closely. She knew there was no point in arguing anymore. Not now, not when the die had already been cast. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to commit an unforgivable act, one that would haunt them all for the rest of their lives. Finally, the moment arrived. The quantum annihilation beam hummed to life, its energy crackling ominously. Through the viewport, the crew watched as the beam descended toward Zorathias 7, striking the planet with devastating precision. In an instant, the lush paradise was engulfed in flames, its cities crumbling, its forests burning, its inhabitants vaporized. The transformation was horrifyingly swift, leaving behind nothing but a barren wasteland floating in the void of space. For a long moment, no one spoke. The bridge was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of the ship's engines. Then, slowly, the reality of what they had done began to sink in. Rachel broke the silence first. "Will, how could we let this happen?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through the stillness like a knife. William turned to face her, his expression grim. "We did what we had to do," he said, though his words sounded hollow, even to his own ears. Deep down, he knew she was right. They had crossed the line, and there was no going back. Part 2. The silence on the bridge of the Eclipse was deafening. The crew sat frozen in their seats, staring at the holographic display that showed the aftermath of Zoratheo 7's destruction. What had once been a vibrant, thriving planet was now a desolate wasteland, its surface charred and lifeless. The sight was so stark, so final, that it left many struggling to process what they had just witnessed. For some, it was the first time they truly understood the devastating power of the weapon they carried. Rachel Monroe stood near the viewport, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line as she stared at the ruined planet below. She couldn't shake the feeling that they had made a terrible mistake. "Will," she said softly, turning to her husband, "this wasn't supposed to happen. We didn't even give them a chance." Commander William Carter stood rigidly at his post, his hands clasped behind his back. His expression was unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed the turmoil inside him. "We followed orders," he replied, his voice steady but lacking conviction. "Earth Command said the Zorathians were hostile. They told us this was necessary, but did you see any signs of hostility?" Rachel shot back, her voice rising slightly. "Did you see weapons? Fortifications? Anything that suggested they were preparing to attack us?" William hesitated. He wanted to defend their actions, to justify the decision that had led to the annihilation of an entire civilization, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he glanced at the crew, who were beginning to murmur amongst themselves. Some looked horrified, others angry, and a few seemed numb, as if they couldn't comprehend the enormity of what they had done. Laura Bennett, the young communications officer, was one of the most visibly shaken. She sat at her station, her fingers trembling as she replayed the fragmented transmission they had intercepted before the attack. The phrase "we mean no harm" echoed faintly through her headphones, haunting her with its simplicity. She couldn't stop thinking about the lives they had ended, lives that might have been saved if they had only listened. "Sir," Laura said suddenly, standing up and addressing William, "I think we should report this. Something isn't right here. Intelligence reports. They don't match what we saw on Zoratheo 7. William frowned, his patience wearing thin. "Lieutenant Bennett, I understand your concerns, but our orders came directly from Earth Command. If there are discrepancies, they'll be addressed later. Right now, we need to focus on completing our mission." "But what if we're wrong?" Laura persisted, her green eyes wide with urgency. "What if we just destroyed an innocent planet?" Her question hung in the air, unanswered. William turned away, unwilling or perhaps unable to confront the possibility that they had acted unjustly. Instead, he barked an order for everyone to return to their duties. The crew reluctantly complied, though the unease remained palpable. Later, that evening, Rachel found herself alone in the engineering bay, surrounded by the hum of machinery and the soft glow of diagnostic panels. She had always found solace in the intricate workings of the Eclipse, but tonight, even the familiar rhythms of the ship failed to calm her. Her mind kept returning to the image of Zorathea 7 burning, reduced to ash in a matter of seconds. It was a sobering reminder of the weapon they wielded and the responsibility that came with it. Jason Cole, the navigator, entered the room quietly, carrying a data pad filled with star charts. He paused when he saw Rachel, noting the troubled look on her face. "You okay?" he asked gently, setting the data pad aside. Rachel shook her head. "No, I can't stop thinking about what we did. Those people, they didn't deserve that." None of them did. Jason sighed, leaning against a nearby console. I know how you feel. I've been trying not to think about it, but it's hard. This isn't what I signed up for. You think anyone aboard this ship knew what they were really signing up for? Rachel asked bitterly. They sold us on the idea of saving humanity, but all we're doing is destroying everything in our path. Jason nodded slowly. Maybe, but what choice do we have? If we don't follow orders, we risk mutiny charges or worse. And if we turn back now, Earth will send another ship to finish the job. That doesn't make it right, Rachel snapped. Just because something is easy or convenient doesn't mean it's justified. Jason held up his hands in surrender. Hey, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. None of us wanted this, but here we are. Rachel slumped onto a nearby stool, burying her face in her hands. I don't know how Will does it, she admitted. How he can stand there and give those orders without flinching. Doesn't he feel anything? He feels plenty, Jason said quietly. You know that. He's just better at hiding it than the rest of us. Meanwhile, in his quarters, William sat alone at his desk, staring blankly at a report from Earth Command. The document outlined their next target, a cluster of planets orbiting a distant star, each suspected of harboring alien civilizations. According to the report, these worlds were home to aggressive species that posed a direct threat to human expansion. Yet as William read the details, he couldn't help but notice the same lack of evidence that had troubled him about Zorathea 7. There were no confirmed acts of aggression, no verified sightings of military installations, just vague claims of potential danger. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples as a headache began to form. Doubt gnawed at him, relentless and unyielding. Was he blindly following orders, or was he complicit in something far darker? The weight of command pressed down on him, heavier than ever before. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called, straightening up as Rachel entered the room. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes betraying her sleepless night. We need to talk, she said, closing the door behind her. About what happened and what's going to happen next. William gestured for her to sit, though he remained standing. I'm listening. Rachel took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. Well, I know you believe in following orders. I know you think we're doing this for the greater good, but I can't ignore the fact that we just wiped out an entire planet without giving them a chance to explain themselves. And now we're being sent after more targets, with the same flimsy justifications. At what point do we say, enough is enough? William's jaw tightened. Rachel, I don't like this any more than you do. But we have a duty to protect humanity. If sacrificing a few planets means ensuring our survival, then that's what we have to do. A few planets, Rachel repeated incredulously. Well, we're talking about billions of lives. Civilizations that may not even understand why we're attacking them. How can you call that protection? It's not about them, William said sharply. It's about us, about making sure humanity has a future. You think I enjoy this? You think I wanted to destroy Zorathea 7? Of course not. But sometimes, sacrifices have to be made. Rachel stood abruptly, her frustration boiling over. Sacrifices? Is that what you call genocide now? Because that's what this is, Will. Genocide. Plain and simple. The word hung in the air, sharp and accusatory. William flinched, as if struck, his composure cracking for the first time. Don't say that, he muttered, his voice low and dangerous. Don't you dare put that on me. Why not? Rachel demanded. Someone has to. Someone has to remind you that every button you press, every order you give it, has consequences. Real consequences. And if you keep ignoring them, you'll lose yourself completely. William turned away, unable to meet her gaze. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the truth of her words cut too deeply. For the first time since taking command of the eclipse, he felt truly lost. As the days passed, the crew struggled to move forward. The memory of Zorothea 7 lingered like a shadow, casting doubt over every decision and action. Laura continued to monitor incoming signals, hoping for some sign of hope or redemption. Jason spent hours poring over star charts, searching for a way to avoid further conflict, and Rachel threw herself into her work, using the ship's systems as a distraction from the guilt that weighed heavily on her heart. Even William found it difficult to maintain his usual stoic demeanor. He spent long hours alone in his quarters, reviewing mission parameters and intelligence reports, searching for answers that weren't there. Each new target brought fresh waves of doubt and dread, forcing him to confront the harsh reality of their mission. Despite the growing unrest aboard the Eclipse, preparations for the next strike continued. The crew worked tirelessly, driven by a mix of fear, obligation, and resignation. They were soldiers, after all, bound by duty to carry out their orders, even if those orders went against everything they believed in. And so, the Eclipse sailed onward, its course set for another distant world. The galaxy stretched out before them, vast and unknowable, filled with countless civilizations unaware of the fate that awaited them. On board the ship, tension simmered just beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. The stage was set for rebellion, for redemption, or for ruin. Part 3. The Eclipse drifted silently through the cold, empty void of space, its engines humming faintly as it moved toward its next target. The crew worked in tense silence, their movements mechanical and strained. No one spoke unless absolutely necessary, and even then, their words were clipped and devoid of emotion. The weight of what they had done on Zorothea 7 still hung heavily over them, a dark cloud that refused to dissipate. For many aboard the ship, sleep had become elusive, replaced by restless nights, filled with haunting images of burning planets and screaming voices that weren't real. Laura Bennett sat at her communications station, her fingers hovering nervously over the controls. She had spent the past several hours scanning for signals from nearby star systems, hoping to find anything that might offer clarity or redemption. Her efforts had been fruitless until now. Suddenly, her screen flickered, and a series of fragmented transmissions appeared. They were weak, distorted by distance and interference. But one message stood out: to those who seek truth, question your leaders. Her heart raced as she replayed the transmission, straining to make sense of the broken words. It wasn't clear who had sent it, or why, but the tone was unmistakably a plea for understanding, perhaps even an attempt to warn them. Laura glanced around the bridge, unsure of what to do. Should she report this to Commander Carter? Or would he dismiss it like he had dismissed everything else? Before she could decide, another signal came through. This one was clearer, though still garbled. Earth's reports are false, it said. Aliens sought peace. Humanity chose war. The message ended abruptly, leaving Laura staring at her screen in stunned silence. Her mind raced with questions. Who was sending these messages? Were they telling the truth? And if they were, what did that mean for the mission and for humanity itself? Unable to keep the information to herself, Laura approached Rachel Monroe, who was working in the engineering bay. Rachel looked up as Laura entered, her expression wary but kind. "What is it?" she asked, noticing the younger woman's anxious demeanor. "I intercepted something," Laura began, lowering her voice. "Messages from somewhere out there. They're saying Earth lied to us, that the aliens we're targeting aren't hostile at all." Rachel froze, her tools slipping from her hands and clattering to the floor. "What did you just say?" "They're claiming the intelligence reports are fake," Laura continued, her voice trembling. "That the aliens were trying to communicate peacefully, but Earth ignored them. Worse, fabricated evidence to justify attacking them." Rachel's mind reeled. If the messages were true, it meant everything they had done, the destruction of Zorthias-7, the deaths of billions, was based on a lie, a deliberate lie, orchestrated by Earth Command to further their own agenda. The thought made her stomach churn. "Do you believe them?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Laura admitted, "but I think we need to find out if this is real. If Earth really has been lying to us." Rachel nodded slowly, her resolve hardening. "We can't tell William yet. Not until we have proof. But we need to start looking into this ourselves." Quietly. Later that evening, Rachel met secretly with Jason Cole in the cargo hold, a rarely used section of the ship where they were unlikely to be overheard. She explained what Laura had discovered, showing him copies of the intercepted messages. Jason listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. When she finished, he let out a low whistle. "This changes everything," he said grimly. "If Earth Command has been manipulating us, then we're not soldiers fighting for survival. We're pawns in someone else's game." "Exactly," Rachel agreed. "And if the crew finds out about this, it could tear the ship apart. We need to handle this carefully." Jason nodded, agreed. "But how do we proceed? We can't exactly hack into Earth's database from here, and even if we could, we'd risk getting caught." "We gather allies," Rachel said firmly. "People we trust. People who feel the same way we do. Together, we can figure out a way to uncover the truth." Over the next few days, Rachel, Jason, and Laura quietly reached out to other members of the crew, sharing the intercepted messages, engaging their reactions. To their surprise, they found more support than they expected. Many of the crew had already harbored doubts about the mission, and the idea that Earth Command might have misled them only deepened their unease. Among those who joined their cause were Derek Hayes, a medic with a strong moral compass, and Sophie Lane, a technician skilled in decrypting classified files. As the group grew, so did their determination. They began meeting in secret, pooling their knowledge and resources to investigate the claims made in the intercepted messages. Sophie managed to access archived logs from Earth Command, searching for inconsistencies or red flags. Derek scoured medical records, looking for patterns that might suggest manipulation or coercion among the crew. Meanwhile, Laura continued, monitoring incoming signals, hoping to establish contact with whoever had sent the original messages. Their efforts eventually paid off. When Laura received a new transmission, this time, it included coordinates leading to a hidden data cache located in a nearby asteroid field. The sender claimed the cache contained irrefutable evidence of Earth's deception. Though skeptical, the group decided to investigate. Under the guise of routine maintenance, they convinced Commander Carter to alter the Eclipse's course slightly, bringing them closer to the designated location. When the Eclipse arrived at the asteroid field, Rachel volunteered to lead a small team to retrieve the data cache. Accompanied by Jason, Laura, and Derek, she boarded a shuttle and set out into the rocky expanse. The journey was tense, each member acutely aware of the risks involved. If they were discovered, or worse, if the cache turned out to be a trap, they could jeopardize not only themselves, but the entire mission. After hours of searching, they finally located the cache embedded within a jagged asteroid. It was small, no larger than a briefcase, and protected by layers of encryption. Sophie had prepared them for this possibility, equipping them with tools to bypass the security measures. Working quickly, Laura cracked the code, revealing a trove of documents, recordings, and video footage. What they found confirmed their worst fears. The files detailed a systematic campaign by Earth Command to fabricate threats from alien civilizations, using falsified intelligence reports and manipulated media to sway public opinion. In some cases, peaceful attempts at communication had been deliberately ignored or sabotaged to create the illusion of hostility. The goal was clear: to justify the use of the Eclipse and secure humanity's dominance over the galaxy. Rachel felt sick as she scrolled through the evidence. "This is monstrous," she muttered, her voice shaking with anger. "They've been lying to us from the beginning, using us as tools to carry out their greed." Jason placed a hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. "We can't let them get away with this," he said firmly. "We have to expose the truth." "But how?" Laura asked, her eyes wide with uncertainty. "If we confront William with this, he might side with Earth Command. And if we try to go public, they'll shut us down before we can say a word." "We take it step by step," Rachel replied, her tone resolute. "First, we share this with the rest of our group. Then, we figure out a way to broadcast it, not just to the crew, but to everyone. The galaxy needs to know what Earth is capable of." Back aboard the Eclipse, the group convened in the cargo hold once again, this time with the full weight of their discovery bearing down on them. As they reviewed the evidence together, a mixture of outrage and despair spread through the room. Some expressed fear, worried about the consequences of challenging Earth Command. Others vowed to fight back, determined to stop the cycle of destruction. "We can't keep doing this," Sophie said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Every planet we destroy, every life we take, it's all built on lies. We're not protecting humanity, we're destroying it. And if we don't act," Derek added, "we'll be just as guilty as the people giving the orders." Rachel nodded, her expression grim but determined. "Then we act. Starting now." The decision was unanimous. They would find a way to reveal the truth, no matter the cost. For the first time since leaving Earth, the crew of the Eclipse felt a glimmer of hope, of fragile, flickering light in the darkness. But they also knew the road ahead would be dangerous, fraught with obstacles and sacrifices. As the meeting dispersed, Rachel lingered behind, staring at the holographic display of the galaxy map. The vastness of space stretched out before her, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Somewhere out there, countless civilizations awaited their fate, some peaceful, others unknowable. And aboard the Eclipse, a small group of rebels prepared to challenge the forces that sought to control them all. The seeds of rebellion had been planted. Now, they had to grow. Part 4. The Eclipse sailed through the quiet expanse of space, its sleek form cutting through the void like a shadow. The crew carried on with their duties, though an undercurrent of tension ran through every corridor and station. For those in the know, the discovery of Earth Command's deception had ignited a fire that refused to be extinguished. Rachel Monroe, Jason Cole, Laura Bennett, and the others who had uncovered the truth now faced a daunting task: how to act without tipping off Commander William Carter or alerting Earth Command. Every move they made had to be careful, calculated, and above all, discreet. Rachel spent most of her time in the engineering bay, pretending to work on routine maintenance, while secretly coordinating with the group. She had always been skilled at multitasking, but now her mind was stretched thin, divided between repairing the ship's systems and planning their next steps. Jason, meanwhile, used his position as navigator to subtly alter the Eclipse's course whenever possible, steering them closer to uncharted regions where they might find allies or, at least, avoid detection. Laura monitored communications obsessively, searching for any sign of resistance movements among alien civilizations. Sophie Lane worked tirelessly in the data archives, decrypting more files from the asteroid cache and piecing together the full scope of Earth's lies. Despite their efforts, the weight of what they were doing pressed down on them. They knew the risks. If they were caught, it wouldn't just mean punishment. It could mean death. Yet none of them hesitated. The images of Zoratheo 7 burning still haunted their dreams, fueling their determination to stop the cycle of destruction. It was during one of these tense days that an unexpected event changed everything. The Eclipse's sensors picked up a fleet of ships approaching from a nearby system. At first, the crew assumed it was another alien force preparing to attack. But as the vessels drew closer, they realized something unusual. These ships weren't armed for war. Instead, they appeared to be civilian transports and supply vessels, hastily assembled into a makeshift armada. Commander Carter ordered the Eclipse to hold its position, wary of engaging without proper intelligence. From the bridge, he watched as the lead ship transmitted a signal requesting communication. "Put it through," he instructed, his voice steady despite the unease rippling through him. On the main screen, the face of a man appeared. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes that seemed to bore into the camera. His hair was cropped short, and his uniform, simple yet elegant, marked him as someone of authority. Behind him, rows of crew members worked diligently at their stations, their expressions calm but resolute. "I am Cale Voss," the man said, his voice calm but firm, "leader of the United Systems Alliance. We represent several star systems, united in our quest for peace and cooperation." Carter frowned. "Peace? Then why approach us with such numbers?" Cale's expression softened slightly. "Because we've heard the rumors about your ship, the Eclipse, and its capabilities. We wanted to ensure you understood our intentions before making any rash decisions." "Rash decisions?" Carter echoed, his tone skeptical. "We're here to secure territory for humanity. Your presence complicates matters." "It doesn't have to," Cale replied. "We are not your enemies. In fact, many of our worlds have tried reaching out to Earth in the past, seeking dialogue and understanding. But those attempts were ignored or worse, met with hostility." Carter stiffened. The words struck a nerve, reminding him of the doubts that had been gnawing at him since Zoratheo 7. Still, he couldn't afford to show weakness. "I don't answer to you," he said curtly. "My orders come from Earth Command." "And yet," Cale countered, leaning forward slightly, "you must see that blindly following orders has consequences. Look at what happened to Zorathea 7. Was that truly necessary? Or was it the result of misinformation and fear?" The silence that followed was heavy. Carter glanced at Rachel, who stood near the viewport, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her expression was unreadable, but he could sense her disapproval. Turning back to the screen, he sighed. "What do you want from us?" "A chance," Cale said simply. "A chance to prove that coexistence is possible, that humanity doesn't need to destroy to survive. Allow us to share evidence of Earth's deception, and let your people decide for themselves whether this path is worth continuing." Carter hesitated. On one hand, Cale's proposal sounded reasonable, perhaps even hopeful. On the other hand, trusting an alien leader went against everything he had been trained to believe. Before he could respond, Rachel stepped forward. "Will," she said softly, her voice carrying a note of urgency, "listen to him. This could be the opportunity we've been waiting for." Carter shot her a sharp look, warning her to stay silent. But Rachel didn't back down. Instead, she turned to address Cale directly. "If you have proof, we'll hear you out. But understand this, Sif, you're lying. There will be consequences." Cale nodded solemnly. "Fair enough. I'll transmit the data immediately." As the transmission ended, Carter rounded on Rachel. "What do you think you're doing?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "You don't give orders on my ship." "I'm trying to save lives," Rachel shot back, her own voice rising. "Including yours. Don't you see? This is our chance to uncover the truth, to show everyone what Earth has done. And if it's a trap," Carter snapped, "if these aliens are just trying to manipulate us." "They're not," Laura interjected, stepping forward nervously. "I've been monitoring their signals. There's no sign of aggression, just sincerity." Carter stared at her for a moment, then shook his head in frustration. "Fine, let's review the data. But remember this: if anything goes wrong, the responsibility falls on all of you." The information provided by Cale was damning. It included detailed records of Earth's interference with peaceful negotiations, falsified intelligence reports, and even recordings of high-ranking officials discussing strategies to manipulate public opinion. As the crew reviewed the evidence, anger and disbelief spread like wildfire. Even some of those who hadn't been part of the rebellion began to question their mission. Jason summed up the mood perfectly during a secret meeting later that night. "This isn't just about Earth lying to us," he said grimly. "This is about them turning us into monsters. Every planet we destroy, every life we take, it's all because they told us to. We're not soldiers anymore. We're weapons. We can't let it continue," Derek added, his fists clenched. "Not after seeing this. If we go along with Earth's plan, we'll lose whatever humanity we have left. But how do we stop it?" Sophie asked, her voice tinged with desperation. "Even if we expose the truth, Earth Command won't just roll over. They'll fight backhand. They'll use the eclipse to do it." Rachel took a deep breath, her mind racing. She knew they needed a bold move, something that would force Earth's hand. "We contact Kale," she said finally. "Tell him we're willing to work with him. Together, we can broadcast the evidence to the galaxy. Once everyone knows the truth, Earth won't have anywhere to hide." There was a murmur of agreement, though uncertainty lingered in the air. None of them doubted the importance of their cause, but the risks were immense. Betraying Earth Command meant becoming fugitives, hunted across the stars. And yet, staying silent meant complicity in genocide. When Rachel approached Kale with their decision, the alien leader listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "You realize the danger you're putting yourselves in," he said when she finished. "Once you make this choice, there's no turning back." "We know," Rachel replied, her voice steady, despite the knot of fear in her stomach. "But we also know we can't keep destroying innocent lives. If we don't act now, we'll never forgive ourselves." Kale studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. We'll help you broadcast the evidence. But you should prepare your crew. They may not all agree with your decision." Rachel thanked him and returned to the eclipse, her heart pounding with a mix of hope and dread. As she walked through the corridors, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of a precipice, teetering between salvation and ruin. That evening, the group gathered in the cargo hold once again. Rachel addressed them, her voice clear and unwavering. "We've made our decision," she said. "We're going to expose Earth's lies to the galaxy and to humanity. It won't be easy, and it won't be safe. But it's the right thing to do." One by one, the others nodded, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear, resolve, and determination. For the first time in weeks, they felt a glimmer of purpose, fragile thread of hope pulling them toward a future where survival didn't have to come at the cost of morality. Unbeknownst to them, however, Earth Command was already watching. Back on Earth, operatives analyzed intercepted transmissions and flagged suspicious activity aboard the Eclipse. Reinforcements were dispatched a second warship, named the Dawnbreaker, to ensure compliance. The rebels had taken their first step toward rebellion, but the battle for the galaxy's soul was only beginning. Part 5. The Eclipse drifted silently through the cold darkness of space, its crew divided by secrets and shifting allegiances. The decision to ally with Kale Voss and expose Earth's Command's lies had ignited a spark of rebellion among those who knew the truth, but it also created fissures within the ship. Trust, once a given, was now fragile and tenuous. Conversations were whispered in corners, eyes darted suspiciously across hallways, and every interaction carried an undercurrent of tension. Commander William Carter sensed the change. He couldn't put his finger on exactly what was different, but the atmosphere aboard the Eclipse felt heavier, strained in ways it hadn't been before. His instincts told him something was brewing beneath the surface, something dangerous. At first, he dismissed it as paranoia brought on by the weight of their mission. But as days passed, subtle signs began to emerge. Unauthorized meetings in secluded areas, hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when he entered a room, and strange fluctuations in the ship's systems that Rachel attributed to routine. Glitches. Rachel herself was acting differently. She avoided looking him in the eye during briefings, her responses clipped and evasive. When he pressed her about minor discrepancies in the engineering logs, she brushed him off with vague explanations. William wanted to believe she was simply stressed or overworked, but deep down, he feared there was more to it. Her behavior gnawed at him, planting seeds of doubt that refused to be ignored. Meanwhile, the group plotting against Earth Command worked tirelessly to prepare for their next move. They had agreed to broadcast the evidence of Earth's deception to the galaxy, but doing so required careful planning. The transmission needed to reach as many star systems as possible without being intercepted by Earth Command. To achieve this, they decided to use Kale Voss's network of allies, who could amplify the signal and spread the message far beyond the Eclipse's range. Sophie. Lane spent hours refining the data from the asteroid cache, organizing it into a coherent presentation that would leave no room for denial. Laura Bennett coordinated with Kale's communications team, ensuring the timing and encryption of the broadcast would remain secure. Jason Cole adjusted the Eclipse's course again, steering them toward a remote sector of space where they could execute the plan without drawing suspicion. Rachel took charge of rallying the crew, quietly reaching out to individuals she believed might sympathize with their cause. Some were hesitant, afraid of the consequences if they were caught. Others, however, were eager to join, their anger toward Earth Command outweighing their fear. Each new recruit strengthened their resolve, but it also increased the risk of exposure. Every additional person who knew their plans was another potential leak. Despite their progress, tensions within the group were beginning to show. Derek Hayes, whose moral compass had driven much of their effort, grew increasingly anxious about the timeline. "We're running out of time," he said during one of their secret meetings. "If Earth Command finds out what we're doing, they'll send reinforcements, and when that happens, we won't stand a chance." "We can't rush this," Rachel replied firmly. "One mistake could ruin everything. We need to make sure the broadcast is perfect. The whole galaxy has to see it. But what if we don't get the chance?" Derek countered, his voice rising slightly. "What if they catch us before we even start?" Jason stepped in, placing a calming hand on Derek's shoulder. "We'll stay sharp, stay focused. If we keep moving, keep adapting, we can stay ahead of them." Laura nodded in agreement. "And if things go south, we have Kale's support. He's promised to help us, if it comes to that." The mention of Kale brought a flicker of unease to Rachel's expression, though she quickly masked it. She trusted Kale at least. She wanted to, but relying on outsiders still felt like a gamble. For now, though they had no choice, their survival depended on alliances they barely understood. Back on Earth, operatives monitoring the eclipse noticed anomalies in the ship's activity, unauthorized course changes, encrypted transmissions to unknown parties, and irregularities. In the crew's behavior all pointed to insubordination. High-ranking officials convened in a secure chamber, reviewing the data with grim expressions. "They're planning something," one officer said, pointing to a series of flagged communications. "Whatever it is, it involves outside forces, possibly alien factions." Another officer leaned forward, his face shadowed by the glow of the holographic display. "Could they be attempting to defect, to side with the aliens?" "It's possible," the first officer replied. "But either way, we can't allow it. If the eclipse falls into enemy hands or worse, if its crew turns against us, it will jeopardize everything." A third voice cut in, colder and more decisive. "Send the Dawnbreaker. Reinforce their loyalty, or eliminate them entirely." The decision was unanimous. Within hours, the Dawnbreaker, a sleek and formidable warship, launched from Earth's orbit, its engines blazing as it raced toward the eclipse's last known location. Its arrival signaled the beginning of a new phase in Earth's campaign, one marked by suspicion, control, and, if necessary, violence. On board the Eclipse, The crew remained oblivious to the approaching threat. Instead, their attention was focused on internal divisions. Word of the rebellion had begun to trickle beyond the core group, spreading uneasily through the ranks. Some crew members sided with the rebels, while others clung fiercely to their loyalty to Earth Command. Arguments erupted in mess halls and corridors, voices raised in heated debates about morality, duty, and survival. William Carter found himself caught in the middle. As commander, he was expected to maintain order, but the growing unrest made that task nearly impossible. When two engineers nearly came to blows over differing opinions, he intervened, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Enough," he barked, his authority ringing clear. "This is not the time for infighting. We have a mission to complete, and I won't tolerate distractions." His words silenced the immediate conflict, but they did little to ease the underlying tension. Later, alone in his quarters, William replayed the incident in his mind, frustration boiling inside him. Why couldn't they see that questioning orders only led to chaos? Didn't they understand the stakes? As if in answer to his thoughts, a knock sounded at the door. He called for the visitor to enter, expecting another report or request. Instead, Rachel walked in, her expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Will," she began finally, her voice soft but steady, "there's something you need to know." He studied her carefully, noting the determination in her eyes. "What is it?" She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Some of the crew, they've been talking about Earth Command, about the mission." William's jaw tightened. "Go on." "They don't think we're doing the right thing," Rachel continued. "They believe Earth lied to us, that we're destroying innocent lives based on false information." "And do you agree with them?" William asked sharply. Rachel met his gaze squarely. "I don't know what to believe anymore, but I do know this: if we keep following orders blindly, we'll lose whatever humanity we have left." Her words struck a nerve, reminding him of his own doubts. For a moment, he considered confiding in her, sharing the questions that had plagued him since Sorothia 7, but pride and duty stopped him. "We don't have the luxury of second-guessing ourselves," he said firmly. "Our job is to protect humanity, no matter the cost." Rachel shook her head, disappointment flashing across her face. "That's where you're wrong, Will. Protecting humanity means more than just surviving. It means holding on to our values even when it's hard." Before William could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship, startling them both. Red lights flashed along the walls, and automated warnings echoed through the corridors. "Unknown vessel detected, approaching rapidly." William sprang to his feet, his mind racing. "Stay here," he ordered Rachel, before rushing to the bridge. When he arrived, the crew was already scrambling to assess the situation. On the main screen, a massive warship loomed in the distance, its sleek design unmistakable. It was the Dawnbreaker. "What are they doing here?" William demanded, his voice tight with unease. No one answered. Instead, a transmission crackled. "To life," and a stern-faced officer appeared on the screen. "Commander Carter, this is Captain Lewis of the Dawnbreaker. We've been sent to ensure your compliance with Earth Command's directives. Stand down and prepare for boarding." William's stomach sank. Compliance meant surrender, not just of the Eclipse, but of everything they had fought for. He glanced at Rachel, who had followed him to the bridge despite his orders. Her expression mirrored his own dread. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The Eclipse was no longer alone in the vastness of space. Caught between Earth's reinforcements and their own fractured loyalties, its crew faced a choice: submit to Earth's will, or fight for a future they weren't sure they deserved.